The stone beneath your feet is cold. The air smells of sweat, fear, and salt from the sea beyond the city walls. You're surrounded by thousands of faces Roman citizens, soldiers, merchants, slaves all, waiting, and then you hear it. The distant rhythm of drums growing louder, closer, until the ground itself seems to pulse with the sound of Rome's triumph. But this isn't your victory. This is your end. The crowd erupts as the procession enters the forum. At the front, a general rides in gold, draped in purple, his face painted red like a god. Behind him, chained at the wrists and ankles, walks a woman. Her gown once silk, once royal, is torn and filthy. Her hair, which servants once braided with jewels, hangs loose and tangled. She was a queen yesterday. Today, she is a trophy. And Rome will make sure she never forgets it. Before we go deeper, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching this from? It's incredible to me that a story this dark, buried in the dust of ancient history, still finds its way to every corner of the globe. Drop your city or country in the comments. Let's see how far this reaches. Now, let me take you back to a time when victory wasn't just about winning battles. It was about erasing souls. Rome, in the centuries between the fall of the Republic and the height of the Empire, was not just a military machine. It was a theater of power. And the most brutal performances weren't fought with swords. They were staged in the streets, in the homes of the wealthy, and in the arenas. Using the bodies and dignity of the defeated, when Rome crushed a kingdom, the battlefield was only the beginning. The true conquest came after, when the wives, daughters, and mothers of fallen rulers were dragged into Rome's political and social machinery, not as prisoners of war, but as instruments of humiliation. This wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was strategy. The Romans understood something that modern history often forgets: to destroy a nation's future. You don't just kill its men, you control its women. You take the bloodline, you erase the legacy, you turn survival into a punishment worse than death, and they perfected it. Let's go back to the year 167 BCE. The Third Macedonian War has just ended. Rome has defeated King Perseus, the last hope of Macedonian independence. His army is shattered, his treasury is emptied. But the Romans aren't satisfied with military victory. They want a spectacle. So they stage a triumphant grand parade through the streets of Rome, designed not just to celebrate, but to humiliate. At the head of the procession rides Lucius Aemilius Paulus, the Roman general who defeated Perseus. The crowd roars. Children are lifted onto shoulders to see him. Flowers are thrown at his feet. He is a hero, a god among men. Behind him, in chains, walks Perseus himself, once a king, now bent and broken. His royal robes have been stripped away. His crown is gone. He stumbles forward, shackled, eyes cast down. But the Romans aren't finished. Because behind Perseus walk his wife and children, the queen's name is lost to history. Most Roman records didn't bother to preserve it. But we know she was there. Eyewitness accounts describe her torn clothing, her hollow eyes, the way the crowd jeered as she passed. Her children clung to her, crying, confused. They didn't understand why the people were laughing. They didn't understand why their mother couldn't protect them anymore. This was the message Rome sent to the world: resist us, and we will not only defeat you, we will parade your family through our streets. We will strip them of their dignity. We will make their suffering our entertainment. And the cruelest part, they let them live. Death, the Romans believed, was too merciful. Death turned enemies into martyrs. But survival could be weaponized. A living, humiliated queen was worth more than a dead one. She was proof, she was a warning. She was a story that could be told and retold across the empire, in every city, every province, every village that dared to dream of rebellion. After the parade, Perseus and his family were imprisoned. The queen and her children were separated. Some were sold into slavery, others were given to Roman families as servants or concubines. The historical record is vague on their exact fate because to Rome, they no longer mattered. They had served their purpose. But here's the question that historians have wrestled with for centuries. Why did the Romans go this far? Why wasn't military victory enough? The answer lies in the Roman concept of dignitas dignity, honor, reputation. In the Roman worldview, a person's dignity was everything. It defined their place in society, their legacy, their worth. And the most effective way to destroy an enemy wasn't to kill them. It was to strip them of their dignitas, to humiliate them so completely that they became nothing not in death, but in life. For men, this was achieved through defeat in battle, public ridicule, or execution. But for women, the humiliation was more intimate, more invasive, more total, because a woman's dignity in the ancient world was tied to her chastity, her family, her children. Take those away, and you didn't just break her, you erased her. Let's talk about what happened after the triumph. Many of the wives and daughters of defeated rulers were sold in Rome's slave markets. These weren't ordinary markets. They were public spectacles. The women were displayed on raised platforms, their bodies inspected by potential buyers. If they were beautiful, they might be purchased by a wealthy Roman as a concubine. If they were strong, they might be sent to work in the fields or the mines. If they were educated, if they could read, write, or speak multiple languages, they might be kept as tutors or attendants in elite households. But no matter where they ended up, the message was the same. You are no longer a queen. You are property. Some were luckier, if you can call it that. They were married off. This was one of Rome's most insidious tactics. By forcing noblewomen into marriages with Roman allies or even Roman soldiers, they ensured that the bloodlines of conquered peoples would be absorbed into the empire. The children born from these unions would be raised as Romans. They would speak Latin. They would worship Roman gods. They would have no connection to their mother's homelands. One of the most famous examples is Cleopatra Selene, the daughter of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony. After her parents' deaths, she was taken to Rome as a child and paraded in Octavian's triumph. She was 10 years old. She watched her mother's imagia wax effigy since Cleopatra had already died carried through the streets while the crowd mocked and jeered. Octavian spared her life, but not out of kindness. Years later, when she came of age, he married her off to Juba II, the king of Mauritania, Roman puppet state in North Africa. On the surface, it seemed like a generous gesture. She was a queen again, wasn't she? But in reality, she was a political tool. Her marriage secured Rome's influence in Mauritania. Her children would be loyal to Rome, not to Egypt. Her royal blood, once the pride of the Ptolemaic dynasty, was now a chain binding another kingdom to the empire. Cleopatra Selene lived a long life. She had children. She even minted coins with her image on them. But she never returned to Egypt. She never reclaimed her mother's throne. She lived and died as a queen, in name only a prisoner, in a golden cage. And she wasn't alone. Across the empire, in Gaul, in Iberia, in Greece, in Asia Minor, the same pattern repeated. Noblewomen captured in war were married off, enslaved, or kept as hostages. Their lives became bargaining chips, their bodies tools of diplomacy, their children proof of Rome's dominance. But sometimes Rome wanted more than just control. Sometimes they wanted spectacle. The arena, the Colosseum, The amphitheater scattered across the empire was Rome's ultimate stage. And it wasn't just for gladiators. Prisoners of war, criminals, and yes, even noblewomen, were thrown into the sand to die for the entertainment of the masses. The practice was called damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. Prisoners were brought into the arena, unarmed and defenseless, and released into the path of lions, bears, leopards, or wild bulls. The crowd loved it. It was violent, unpredictable, and deeply symbolic. To the Romans, it was proof that no matter how noble your blood, no matter how high your status, Rome could reduce you to nothing. There are accounts, vague but persistent, of women being forced into the arena. Some were dressed as mythological figures, made to reenact tragic scenes from Greek and Roman mythology. Imagine being forced to play the role of Andromeda, chained to a rock, waiting for a hero who would never come, vainly to be torn apart by a beast while thousands cheered. It's almost impossible to comprehend. But to Rome, it made perfect sense, because the arena wasn't about justice. It wasn't even about punishment. It was about control, about showing the world that Rome's power was absolute, that no one, no king, no queen, no god could stand against them. And here's the most haunting part. The Romans recorded all of this. They wrote about it. They celebrated it. They saw no shame in what they did, because to them, this was glory. Now, let's pause for a moment and think about what this meant for the women who survived. Not all of them died in the arena. Not all of them were sold into slavery. Some lived long lives in Roman households. Some remarried. Some even found moments of peace. But they carried a burden that no amount of time could erase. The knowledge that they had survived by losing everything. They had lost their families, their identities, their futures. They had been paraded, mocked, humiliated, used. They had been turned into symbols of Rome's power, of their kingdom's failures, of the cost of resistance. And their children grew up Roman.m. Imagine that. Imagine raising a child who speaks a language you barely know, who prays to gods you don't recognize, who sees your homeland if they even remember Ita as a place Rome was right to conquer. Imagine watching your own bloodline become the thing that destroyed you. That was the genius of Roman cruelty. They didn't just erase nations, they made the survivors complicit in their own erasure. So, what do we do with this knowledge? How do we sit with the fact that one of history's greatest civilizations, the empire that gave us roads, aqueducts, law, literature, architecture, was also capable of this? The truth is, Rome's greatness and Rome's cruelty were never separate. They were two sides of the same coin. The roads were built by slaves. The aqueducts carried water to cities built on conquest. The law protected Roman citizens while stripping dignity from everyone else. And the literature, the histories, the plays, the poems often celebrated the very violence we now find horrifying. Rome didn't succeed despite its brutality. It succeeded because of it, and the women, the queens in chains, the daughters sold in markets, the mothers forced to watch their children become strangers, they were not footnotes. They were the foundation. Their suffering was the price of empire. History remembers the generals, the emperors, the battles, but it forgets the faces in the crowd, the names that were never written down, the voices that were silenced. So let me leave you with this image. A woman, standing in the Roman Forum, surrounded by thousands. She was a queen once. Her people loved her. Her husband trusted her. Her children called her mother. Now, she is a thing to be looked at, jeered at, forgotten. And somewhere in the back of the crowd, a child watches. Maybe a Roman child, maybe a slave, maybe a foreign merchant visiting the capital. And that child doesn't see a queen. That see proof that Rome is eternal, that resistance is pointless, that survival in the face of Rome is its own kind of death. That child will grow up. They will tell the story. And the story will spread across the empire, across the centuries, across the world. Because Rome didn't just conquer land, they conquered memory. And for the women who lived through it, that was the cruelest victory of all.